the film I focused on was Black Rider, directed by Pepe de Quart. Schwarzfaha, also known as Black Rider, is a German film that was released in 1993. The film itself, which most likely represents a time in German history where racial tensions were high, depicts the social struggles of the black community within Germany. That said, as seen in the film, even simple things such as the use of public transportation proved to be a racial obstacle for blacks. In other words, they were constantly targeted based on the premise of race. In any case, this short specifically focuses on the racism and stereotypes a black man endures while riding the tram. The short begins with a sort of thematic montage depicting two notable forms of public transportation, that being the metro or train, as well as a tram. Furthermore, aside from just the transportation, various shots of pedestrians were incorporated. The pedestrians are filmed doing things such as exiting trains or riding escalators or walking down stairs. And the fact that these two topics are filmed simultaneously through parallel editing creates a sense of chaos, rapidness, and disorder within the montage, and also in what appears to be these people, their daily commute. It's also important to note that each shot in this montage seems to cut before the content curve, again establishing this fast-paced rhythm and this chaotic, the sense of chaos. Additionally, in terms of the specific shots in the montage, a selection of shots were used in conjunction with one another to develop the setting. These shots include loosely framed long shots of trains and trams filmed with a shallow depth of field, as well as tightly framed medium shots of commuters, both of which, meaning both the shots of the trains and trams as well as the commuters, are used to increase the aforementioned chaotic and fast-paced effect. Furthermore, most of these shots appear to be at eye level, something that is also seen later in the short when it's filmed on the tram itself. This ultimately makes the viewer feel as though they are a commuter themselves and a part of this hectic scene. Aside from the montage sequence, a notable feature in this short, which develops meaning, exists in the use of diegetic sound as seen in the form of music, foleyes, and dialogue. All of the aforementioned applications of sound are used to establish dominance. On that note, specifically referring to music, when the main character of the short, the Black Rider, is first introduced to the audience, he is filmed using a low-angle medium shot, talking to his friends and blasting music. Aside from just the Black Rider, a series of reaction shots of additional commuters, all of which are white, were also shown. In these reaction shots, the music linked to the Black Rider can be heard. And this, as mentioned previously, establishes his dominance as a character. The use of music to establish dominance is also seen later in the short when a white man blasting music enters the tram. As soon as the man boards the tram, the disruptive music emitted from his headphones, it was his headphones, can be heard throughout the tram. His music, similar to the Black Rider, makes him a dominant. His dominance is also reinforced by a reaction shot of the commuters on the tram. The reaction shot is this tightly framed and very dense full shot, which depicts a number of commuters diverting their attention towards the man. Additionally, the man's dominance is a bit ironic. The reason being is that the entire time the Black Rider's on the train, he's being racially attacked by an elderly woman who's sitting next to him. Furthermore, these attacks were unprovoked, considering that the Black Rider was minding his own business and just not speaking. He was just sitting there. However, when the White Rider, who's blasting music, enters the tram, the woman makes no comment, which ultimately hones in on and reinforces her racial prejudice towards the black community. The non-diegetic music or score employed in the short also develops meaning. Towards the end of the short, moments before the Black Rider consumes the elderly woman's ticket, there is a suspenseful and fast-paced techno-esque score that was used. This develops tension for the audience and acts as foreshadowing for the event which follows, which was when the Black Rider himself ate the ticket. Furthermore, the use of Foley's are also important for creating dominance and meaning. While riding on the tram, the Black Rider is seen eating something crunchy, and to emphasize the crunch of his snack, a fairly loud Foley of a crunching sound was employed. The crunching sound foreshadows the ending of the film, as aforementioned, when the Black Rider eats the elderly woman's ticket. So therefore, the use of the Foley establishes the Black Rider's intentions, and also adds dominance to both his actions, and as well as to the sound itself. Lastly, dialogue is yet another application of sound which creates both dominance and meaning in the film. Since the elderly woman sitting next to the Black Rider has the bulk of the dialogue, her character becomes dominant for that reason. Throughout the tram ride, the woman unleashes a slew of hurtful racial comments towards the Black Rider, such as referring to him and the entire black community as savages who are impossible to control, and that you can't tell one another apart, things of that nature. So hence, her dialogue develops her attitude towards blacks. Additionally, what makes this short fairly difficult to watch is the reaction of the other passengers on the tram to her dialogue. Through a series of reaction shots employed throughout the elderly lady's rant, the audience sees that the other passengers are deliberately attempting to avoid getting involved in their conversation. At one point, there's this echo effect applied to her dialogue, followed by a dolly over a series of close-up shots of the ears and eyes of other passengers. Since these shots show them not paying attention to the woman's comments and or looking away, yet her dialogue becomes distorted, this reinforces the idea that although they hear what she's saying, they don't want to intervene, so they keep their distance. Aside from sound, another important stylistic feature which creates meaning in the film is the ironic use of proxemic patterns and the ironic placement of the talents. Since the elderly woman and the Black Rider are, in terms of the proxemic patterns, in the personal, if not the intimate range, without context to their conversation, it would appear that these two are almost friendly or comfortable with one another. However, this is far from the case, which is seen with her pernicious dialogue towards the Black Rider. Additionally, since both characters are predominantly filmed in a tight medium shot with their fronts facing the camera, this also generates a certain sense of intimacy. However, as aforementioned, this is not the case. Hence, through the ironic use of proxemic patterns and the placement of the talents, the implicit feeling of intimacy is ultimately translated as a feeling of tension. Furthermore, both color and lighting are critical stylistic elements that are used in the film. Since the film is black and white, there really is no color palette aside from, obviously, black, white, and gray. Therefore, the manipulation of lighting becomes increasingly important. However, since the bulk of the short is filmed on a tram, natural lighting seems to be the main source of light. As a result, there's this heavy contrast in which some of the passengers seem to be overexposed, giving a sort of high-key lighting effect, while others are immersed in shadow, creating this sort of low-key effect. Overall, this gives the effect that everyone is obviously moving on a tram. Lastly, wardrobe is an important stylistic feature incorporated in this short. The Black Rider is seen wearing urban clothes, which might be indicative of the attire popularized by the community, or popularized by the black community at the time. Contrarily, the elderly woman is dressed in a fairly formal coat and hat. This, similar to the clothes of the black man, might be indicative of the time period which the woman grew up in, hence her radical racial beliefs towards blacks. All things considered, it's the culmination of the aforementioned stylistic effects which create meaning in the film.